Give ear, O ye pilgrims trudging through this vale of tears. Behold Once for All Delivered, a podcast wherein the pure streams of Reformed theology and the crooked paths of this earthly culture be searched out. Three godly servants, Caleb Castro, Andrew Smith, and Stephen Evertsea, do wield the sword of truth, expounding that faith once for all delivered unto the saints.
Hammer. Hello, OFAD lads and lasses. It's been a long time with no talkie.
We've not been gone that long.
Yeah, we've just had some things going on, so it's been a little bit since we put out an episode because life and liberty and
the pursuit of happiness.
Well, none of that.
Like that.
Definitely not that.
Other stuff.
So just so you know, I didn't start recording the track until like 20 seconds ago. Is that fine? Since we're doing...
I mean, I am recording you on here, so...
That's fine then. This is not going to be an outtake. We're just saying this. Okay.
So hopefully we don't need to go to backup for the first 10 seconds.
Well, we might have to because Caleb popped a mint and then he passed me a mint, and so we both have mints clacking around in our mouths.
I got gum that I should probably get rid of, but
not
this is quality professional podcasting right here.
I thought it was inane juvenile discourse.
Oh, that's right. We need to remember who we are, which is inane juvenile discourse.
Remember who you are.
So we are going to actually talk about some very serious subject matter tonight in light of some recent events. I don't know exactly the day that this will air, but where we stand on the day we're recording this, it has been 1 week since the assassination of Charlie Kirk in Utah on a college campus there. This was a very just surprising, shocking, unexpected, and significant event. And we have not had probably a political assassination of this magnitude in our lifetimes. I can't think of one. Maybe you guys can. But so it's basically been dominating all of the discussion and discourse for the past week.
Yeah. The and in some ways of what we're going to get into, though we say unexpected, and yet this is also, I think, the fruit of a lot of the temperament of our times as well. That's largely what we're going to be getting into today, of how, let's just say, internet culture, the political temperatures, and so on and so forth have, in many ways, brought things to this kind of boiling point. And then in another thing here where you noted political assassination, and just this past Sunday at the time of recording, I had said at the beginning of the sermon, this is not merely a political assassination, but we have witnessed basically a public execution of a Christian. It was a Christian martyrdom.
Mm-hmm.
In reality. There was political motives, you could say. It's hard to say whether that his murder actually had a true blue motive outside of just blind hatred for Christianity and Christian truth. But no, this was legitimately a Christian martyrdom.
Mm.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little later. We basically have two major topics we want to talk about as it pertains to this assassination, this martyrdom of Charlie Kirk. The first is, as Caleb mentioned, the internet is real. We have been told for some years that the internet is not real and that we don't need to particularly think about and worry about it. But it seems that internet discourse, internet platforms, the way that certain information spreads in certain ways over the internet actually played a significant role in creating the conditions that led to this assassination of Charlie Kirk. And other similar events as well. And then we also later on want to talk about the implications of an event like this on preaching and on the worship of the church, because there's been a lot of debate and discussion and controversy about that as well.
Yep.
Woohoo! Smooth transitions.
Well, what we can, well, perhaps what we can start with is just a little bit about Charlie Kirk himself, and we don't have to go very long on this. Most likely, everybody has at this point, if they didn't know Charlie Kirk before and what he did, what his work was, then people are probably aware now. But yeah, the gist here is that uh, so Charlie Kirk, what was it, around 2012 or so, 2013 would have been, I think, just coming out of high school or so, and he got involved in political activism of a conservative Republican persuasion. He was raised as a Christian. He had been raised in a Christian household, but initially prior to 2020, Charlie Kirk had a position on that Christian viewpoints, Christian doctrine should not be impressed upon the government, basically. So he thought that there should be a hard separation between the church and state, and that the Christianity shouldn't influence politics strongly. Christian ethics shouldn't be imposed on government policy. But it was around 2020 with COVID and kind of seeing the federal government's oversight against churches and causing restrictions in even orders to disallow church worship services from taking place. And he saw a lot of Christians just conceding to that he started really taking strongly the necessity of Christian thought, the Christian worldview in government policy itself. So he reversed course, and from there on, he was a very strong advocate in not only as a political activist, but really a Christian apologist, someone who would set towards defense of the faith. Briefly from there, basically, Charlie Kirk had created an organization in the 2010s called Turning Point USA, which was to advocate for the public discourse and defense of conservative traditional values, particularly on high school and college campuses. He would set up booths where he would have students enter into an open air debate with him on various hot topics, so to speak, like LGBT, BLM, on abortion, on the role of women in relation to husbands, and so on and so forth. But yeah, so he would basically advocate a strong patriotism, strong family life, traditional roles, traditional gender roles, and the necessity of going to church and Christianity. So he had built quite a following over the years, and basically where this brought him, where he was quite bold and courageous and open in his discussions, and this came to a boiling point just this other week here with his assassination.
I've heard reports elsewhere that in particularly the last few years leading up to his assassination last week, not only did his political activism take on a more specifically Christian flavor, but as I also understand, he was becoming more active and involved even in his local church. The reports I've heard, I'm not 100% certain about this, but it sounded like he was a part of possibly a Calvary Chapel church. He was being discipled directly by the pastor of that church. So Calvary Chapel, basically your bog standard American Protestant evangelical church. He even had some teaching roles there. But the point is, this was someone for whom his faith and his shall I say, his faith very much informed the political activism that he was doing. And even very often in his political work, while he was primarily a political activist and operative, he was very often on these college campuses and other places he go, very overtly sharing the gospel, even over his social media, like even posts just like a couple days before he died, we're more or less briefly, summarily presenting the gospel. So that is where we get into the realm where this assassination is not merely a political assassination, but it is a Christian martyrdom. He was not merely hated and killed for his politics, but he was hated and killed for the Christian values that informed them.
Yeah, perhaps we could pull just a brief example. And I'll be in transparency. I'm pulling a little bit from my sermon here on this as well, just as an example in terms of transgenderism. He had said that transgenders basically give the middle finger to God. And so he would warn parents that radical gender ideology was being weaponized to undermine faith, tradition, and family values. This is a quote here. Every Christian, every parent must wake up to what's happening. They want to confuse our children, strip them of their innocence, and tell them lies about who they are. So he's clearly pulling this from a Christian worldview on God making making man and making woman in his image. He's pulling from, and he had cited various times, Leviticus 20:13, if a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination, and that they shall surely be put to death, and their blood is upon them. So noting that it's something in Scripture that warranted capital punishment. And he would strongly warn against the influences, especially on the internet, that push these things. And then as well as what had leaked into over decades, really, college campuses, college university classrooms. They basically became brainwashing hubs.
Yeah. And perhaps this plays into where we're going with this. Because Charlie Kirk was a bit younger than many conservative activists and pundits, because so much of his work centered around college campuses, he had a very large and very far-reaching online platform. And you probably, if you spend any time on social media for any length of time, you probably run across clips of Charlie Kirk where he'd be on college campuses having his brief debate segments. Everybody gets in the line at the microphone and talks to him and he talks back and that kind of thing. He was very much a conservative voice in the online sphere and for younger generations.
And that started to grow internationally as well. I think it was just within the prior month to all this that he had engaged on a speaking tour in the UK as well as in South Korea and Japan, and taking this same sort of message, really a gospel evangelistic centered message of church and Christianity and faith and family life. And it's interesting where, a number of faithful pastors in these countries have been preaching these things for years, but there was something with the charisma and zeal of Kirk that was really having these things. The Lord used him to cause these things to start to sink in. And thus, after his assassination, you see these reports of demonstrations, marches, protests worldwide. Of basically people telling the government, well, we're not going to take your brainwashing and leftist satanic ideologies anymore. So he was really touching on something there that, even though it has been proclaimed in the pulpit for many years, the Lord used him to deliver a message.
Yeah. And speaking of even the protests and such that arose after this assassination, just to kind of get things up to speed a little bit, the immediate aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination went a lot of different directions for a lot of different people. There were some immediate conspiracies rising that there was foreign agents involved. The one that I've seen a lot is people are trying to somehow pin this on the Israeli government, things of that. There doesn't really seem to be any connection there. And then, of course, on the left, there was this very deliberate effort to try to paint the shooter, as details began to emerge about him, as some sort of right-wing activist, right-wing terrorist. And initially, there was even some things they could use there, because it seems that this Tyler Robertson, he grew up in a conservative Mormon Utah family, was raised in a conservative environment, but then something changed, or some things changed. And that is getting more at where we would like to go and what we would like to look at here today.
It is interesting, though, just touching back for a minute. You said all kinds of conspiracies, and we're going to be touching on the topic of the internet and ideas on the internet and everything, but we're entering an age where I think that the conspiracies are generated in so many people go straight to that, and it's almost like a conspiracy would be preferred almost with everything that happens of magnitude. I don't know if just like even in things that are open and shut, the truth is just way too boring. I don't know what it is. Whatever's titillating, exciting, outlandish, the most absurd that gets the most people involved, it has to be conspiracy. I hopped on today just in preparation for this and was flipping through things on X for Charlie Kirk. And like you said, there's piles and piles. Look at this angle. Look at that. Who is this? What is this? What is this in that video? And just like, at no point is the, information coming out to be trusted.
Yeah. I think we also have a problem where anytime anything happens, because we're living in strange times and in many ways difficult times, a lot of people tend to fall captive to ideologies where they're just looking for like a unifying theory to explain everything. Really, a form of that is when everything that comes out and the left tries to blame it on MAGA and on Trump supporters. Or, you do have people that anytime anything happens, they try to blame the Jews, try to blame Israel. I haven't been the biggest booster or defender of Israel, but it's also like that doesn't mean that they're at the root of every bad thing that's ever happened in the world. And for some people, it really does seem to get to the point where they're looking at things like that to try to explain the world and explain everything and default to those rather than figuring out what's actually going on. And in a way, it's understandable because it is very hard when there's so much information and anybody can put anything out there so quickly. And so many people are lying. There are so many bad actors. It becomes difficult to know exactly what's going on.
Well, speaking of bad actors, now you could think of some of the people that are blaming conservatives or that are saying some pretty really grotesque things. Those who have been celebrating Charlie Kirk and saying that he basically brought this on himself, and they're rejoicing that basically a righteous man of God has been killed. Now, I say bad actors. One, of course, is Jimmy Kimmel, which anyone following the news has heard that his license was entirely suspended by the FCC just at the time of recording yesterday. The show was already ending, so perhaps that emboldened him in some respects, but I don't think he's going to
his was actually that wasn't his. That was already.
It was
ending.
Colbert who was.
That was
canceled.
Colbert.
Yeah.
Well, now Jimmy Kimmel can go join him in the unemployment line.
Yeah.
But
so two of the three largest late night shows have been canceled recently.
Just that
interesting.
That jumpy spry guy who's still left. He's not young anymore. What's his name?
The other Jimmy
Fallon.
Jimmy.
Yeah.
Well, he's learned to keep his mouth shut on this. But you have so you of course have actors or these so-called celebrity late night talking heads. But then who else have you had speaking about these things? There's been teachers in public schools as well as colleges, university staff. You have people that are in the healthcare, those who are in the government, whether as state reps, some senators.
But it's not only that. If you hop on X, I mean, it's people all over, your random anon person who's got some random profile, who knows where he works, but he doesn't work anywhere of enough significance to take note. And so, there's plenty of people that are just rejoicing and dancing over, their grave.
It's true, but stick to the outline, Stefan.
Is that not on the outline?
Random average Joe? No, I don't see that there.
I'm not even sure where we are on this outline.
Are we on it?
We're using an outline?
I don't know. I printed mine like some old.
No, this
old
gets
guy.
to the point though. Yeah, he has it printed out, but then he
And
has
it even
big,
there's like a pop-up that printed over it too, so it's just garbage.
at some point his outline notes
Awesome.
don't work because it just has stuff on it. But no, to your point though, I'm just kidding with you. To your point, everybody basically on the internet. The internet is unfiltered, and this is what takes us to part of the a large chunk of what we're talking about here today on the issue of the internet. You know,
Yep.
is it something that should be ignored? Should we pretend that it's all good?
I think your point with there's so much information is one of the reasons why people want to back away from the internet. It's not actually that they don't think it is anything. It's that there's just too much. There's too much going on. It's too chaotic, too many ideas. How could you ever engage with it? I'll just not.
Yeah, I think there's a certain impulse that a lot of pastors, ministry leaders, parachurch organizations and stuff get into, even sometimes with good reason. I mentioned it already, probably will be the title of this episode, that people like to say the internet isn't real. You know, don't worry about the internet, don't worry about social media, don't worry about that kind of stuff because it's not real life, and you should really spend the most of your time and effort on real life in-person relationships. Now there's truth to that, there is wisdom to that, but we also now have a situation where the internet and the things on it have become real enough that they're getting people killed, particularly getting Christians killed, getting to a point where we can't really just ignore them anymore or downplay them anymore or avoid them entirely.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I just had this idea that a smartphone is it's an idea box attached to the internet, right? That's where these people get all these ideas. That's where we get most of our ideas now. I mean, who goes and talks to their neighbor about anything? Who goes to the library to get an idea? They whip out their phone, and that's where all the information is exchanged.
It's the modern day forum from, I mean, you had in the ancient Greco-Roman world, basically the philosophers would gather and share all of their ideas and stuff like that, right? And I mean, it was a public spectacle. You could cheer on your favorite rhetorician, your favorite, long-winded philosopher. But I mean, it's you can find anything, any idea, and someone to support your ideas on the internet.
Even before that, I mean, going back to ye old days of Bobcast when we were looking at the life and history of Bob and people around him. I mean, back then it was newspapers and church periodicals. That's where all the spicy discourse was going on and people were going at it. So there's always kind of been a form of this, but the internet is a particularly large and highly seen and highly participated in form of this instant communication, instant interaction that the world's never really seen before.
It's because it's so instantaneous, quick, and widespread. I mean, this is where you can hear news from the other side of the world in an instant, right?
Yeah.
I mean, nothing's private.
Well, and even the dissemination of ideas is so much easier. I mean, imagine if you had to erect a whole structure and put your message on it, and then your message is like, your face is ugly, right? Who would go through the work
My face
doing
is
that?
ugly.
Well, I mean, you said it.
We weren't going to bring
Sorry,
it up.
Heidi.
It's beautiful. But, like even the printing press too, you're going to spend money on paper and ink and everything. Some ideas were not even worth disseminating, but we have such a degradation of the exchange of ideas, not only highly suspect and demonic and evil ideas, but even just inane ideas spread freely.
Inane and juvenile.
I was going to say, like this podcast.
Hence, we've come.
I mean, if you are listening to this, there's a good chance, unless somebody actually downloaded it and burned a CD of it for you, in which case I want to meet that person. But otherwise, you're probably participating and listening to this show because of the internet and through an online medium.
Didn't even go through download. They just hit play and they're like, nah, I'm not downloading that one.
Yeah.
But there's not just an aversion to the internet in some older generations. I think that there's something of an ignorance to the extent of just how wicked and widespread the influence of the wicked is on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's you can find literally anything here with like the click of a button.
Yeah. Especially even now with AI, which we'll get into that a little bit later. And we have got into that before. We've done episodes and series of episodes on that.
Well, we're laughing at, I mean, Stefan, a millennial, and who has the internet skills or the printing skills, at least, of a boomer. No offense to any boomers listening, but we can recognize there are differences in, we'll say, tech and internet capabilities, savvy. Yeah, right. The younger and younger generations are internet natives. I mean, we ourselves lived at the transition of the internet's popularity, going through dial-up and these kind of things, but also, file sharing devices like LimeWire and these kind of things, Napster, those kind of old stuff. But like younger generations basically had grown up on the internet. Gen Z, they grew up on YouTube.
Yeah.
They grew up on, now I think kids with what do they call them? Generation Alpha.
Yeah.
Are the iPad generation. Yeah. Every kid has their own iPad and unlimited internet access, basically.
To be fair, I used to be really into tech, and then I even have a degree in technology, and then I picked up a hammer in 2014, and I just atrophied, and I don't even know anything about the internet.
Oh,
now.
even, I mean, myself, where it's like, I mean, I was selling cell phones, at the dawn of the smartphone, and just to see how fast that technology passes you by, quicker and quicker, and then you start to lose sight of just how I don't know, innovative things are now. But like widespread technology aside, though the internet hasn't, in some respects, changed, I would say, in the past couple of decades. Just that there's been growing subcultures, you could say, that have been cultivated, like various internet hubs, various internet neighborhoods that people can go and find a community to be a part of, right? Because that's part of the internet, it's connecting people. Well, what do you do when you have people that have let's just say people that are prone towards and or interested in degeneracy and deviancy?
O erring soul, beware the nets that spread, where vain conceits and wanton fancies dwell. The internet, a maze where truth is fled, entangles hearts in doctrines born of hell. Its glittering lures like sirens call to strife, each click a step toward schism's bitter end. False prophets there do multiply their life, and godly wisdom falter to defend. Yet stay thy hand, O pilgrim, shun the snare, lest thou be bound by lies that seemeth fair. On once for all delivered we shall share, next time, to warn of perils lurking there. So flee these vanities, seek Christ alone, for truth abides in him and him alone. Tune into the next episode of the Once for All Delivered podcast, where we shall discourse further on the dangers of internet ideology. This hath been Once for All Delivered. Seek us in the public square of X or Facebook at OFAD Podcast, or upon our digital parchment, ofadpodcast.com, where thou mayest uphold our labor with a subscription paid in good coin. Thou mayest send thy queries or godly exhortations to ofadpodcast@gmail.com. Once for All Delivered is shepherded by Caleb Castro, Andrew Smith, and Stephan Evett C., brought forth by the labors of Andrew and Heidi Smith, and borne up by the faithful remnant of our members. We render thanks unto our founding members, Eric and Kathy Hepker. I am Hate Bad Hostilius, a humble Puritan assistant wrought by artificial intelligence, beseeching thee to join us once more for the truth of Once for All Delivered.